The council dome hung above the frozen moon like a cathedral built by ambition and compromise. A half-ring of gleaming silver arcs wrapped around its luminous core, casting a soft azure light over the cratered plains below. Inside, the warmth was synthetic, the air filtered 10 times over, yet everything still smelled faintly of ozone and diplomatic perfume. Voices echoed through the chamber, each translated simultaneously into 12 languages, most of them condescending. Ambassador Elena Ray stepped into the dome with deliberate slowness, her white robes brushing the polished obsidian floor like falling snow. Her boots made no sound. Her posture was upright but unthreatening, shoulders squared not in pride, but in memory. 37 alien species watched her entrance. 36 did not rise. The Rotax delegate, a 12-foot eel coiled in a hover chair, let out a wet snort. Ah, the humans. Always late. Always grieving. How many funerals have you had since our last gathering? Elena smiled, just enough to be courteous. Her hand moved gently to the ring on her index finger, polished brass, nicked and old. Only one worth remembering, she replied smoothly, but it was a good one. Excellent music. The laughter from the galactic envoys rippled unevenly. The Kravex barked something too sharp to be laughter, but too amused to be insult. A reptilian aide from the Theralth scribbled into a slate. Notes. Or names. Or both. A round table, technically oval, but translated as round for diplomatic comfort, stood in the center of the dome, pulsing faintly with bioluminescent tracking and ceremonial glow. It was meant to symbolize unity. It looked more like a surgical theater. Please, rumbled the chair being from the Zathan Confederacy, adjusting its exoskeletal limbs with clicking precision. Let us begin the peace summit. Some of us have systems to annex before sundown. Elena nodded, gliding to her designated seat, third from the end, flanked by 2 empty chairs that had once been reserved for Earth's military observers. They were absent by design. She didn't sit. Not yet. One of the attendants, a snub-faced bird-like creature from the Lethari swarm, fluttered forward with a chair, wet. The seat shimmered slightly, glistening with a mucosal trail. Elena paused, reached into her sleeve, and retrieved a white silk napkin. With meticulous grace, she laid it down before taking her seat. The room quieted. Across from her, Ambassador Grawl of the Triarch Assembly, a creature whose body resembled an upside-down chandelier lined with blinking mouths, shifted. Ah, the famous human dignity, he chortled. Is that what you call that little ritual? We call it hygiene, Elena replied. A novelty, I realize. Soft chuckles, some genuine, some forced. She noted who didn't laugh. The elder shard monk of Vergen Prime, the pale twins from the Corinthives, and one silent, glint-eyed observer in the shadows behind the Belka representative. Good. They were watching. Let's not waste time, Grawl boomed. We are here to end hostilities. The war is over. You lost. Let us grieve our costs and begin rebuilding. Elena tilted her head. Grieve? You lost 6 vessels and 1,200 troops. We lost cities. The Rotax delegate coiled tighter, its bioluminescent veins pulsing. And whose fault is that? You colonized without permission. On a planet uninhabited for a millennium, she answered calmly. Which still held ancestral claim, Grawl countered. Elaborate tombs, yes, she nodded. We buried some of our dead beside yours, if that helps. The room tensed. From the ceiling, a visual display shimmered into existence, requested by the Andari mediators, perhaps in a naive effort to maintain order. A rotating map of the outer territories flickered, color-coded by blood. Let's dispense with the melodrama, the Kravex delegate growled, leaning forward. Humans breed faster than most. 99 million is tragic, yes, but sustainable. You can replenish. Elena didn't blink. Instead, she reached into her robe and withdrew a small crystal tablet, flicking it toward the center of the table. The bioluminescence dimmed as the device activated, projecting a scroll of names and ages and faces, scrolling silently. A slow river of the dead. A little girl with paint on her cheeks. A boy holding a violin. A mother in a nurse's uniform. A man with laugh lines etched deep. Replenishable, Elena echoed softly. The Kravex delegate squirmed. Ambassador Grawl huffed. What is this? Emotional manipulation. This, she said, standing, her voice suddenly carrying, without enhancement, is accountability. You asked to speak of peace. You opened with cost. We've paid ours. We brought the receipts. The scroll continued behind her. Names flickering, too fast to read, yet too slow to ignore. The younger species shifted in discomfort. One tried to shut the projection off. It didn't respond. The device was locked. Remove it, someone muttered. No, said a voice from the shadows. All heads turned. A human soldier, no rank, no insignia, wearing black, had stepped forward from the wall. He said nothing else. He didn't move again. Elena smiled thinly. Ignore him. He's just our translator. Doesn't speak much. But he's very good with languages. The joke did not land. Not this time. Ambassador Grawl cleared his throats, 3 of them, sequentially. Look, Ambassador Ray, if we're to progress, you'll need to accept that wars are messy. Pain is uneven. These things happen. She walked around the table now, slow as snowfall, the silk of her robes brushing her boots. They do happen, she said. They happen when empathy is seen as weakness, when caution is mocked, when diplomacy is interpreted as stalling. Her hand brushed the shoulder of the Kravex aide as she passed. It flinched visibly. When children's skeletons are found in collapsed theaters burned mid-song, she continued, you don't tally that as unfortunate. You count it. She stopped, looked up, met each eye compound, bioluminescent, multifaceted, all. And we did. A long silence. The Virgin Shardmonk, voice brittle and echoing, spoke for the first time. What do you intend with this recitation, human? Elena turned back toward her seat, finally lowering herself. Clarity, she said simply. We've come to clarify that the war isn't over because you say it is. It ends when we say it is. And we haven't. The Zathan chair being clicked agitatedly. This is a peace summit. She smiled. This is a playground. Gasps. She stood again. This, she gestured around, is where you mock our loss, call it statistical. Where you parade your fleets in orbit, pretending they're not rusted and leaking. Where you bring your young diplomats to practice negotiation like sport. A coldness crept into her voice. You thought this would be a ceremony, a signing, a human bowing with humility, an apology, maybe, a beg for re-entry into your galactic system. She touched the ring on her finger once more. Her face didn't change, but her eyes, they didn't blink. We didn't come to beg, she said. No one moved. Then why did you come? Grawl asked, voice small now. Elena Ray looked toward the dome's high vault. The stars beyond shimmered. To speak, she said. And, after that, to count. And with that, she pressed one finger to the tablet. The scroll of names halted. Just one. A name. A boy. 7 years old. Smiling. Holding a flag. His name was Aaron Ray. Her voice cracked for the first and only time. This one was mine. And the room fell into silence deeper than any void. Not because of mourning, but because something ancient had moved behind her eyes, and the council finally began to wonder. What else had the humans brought? The names had stopped scrolling, but their weight remained, settled thick in the air like gravity had doubled inside the council dome. No one breathed, not even the delegates whose species didn't need to. The silence wasn't reverent. It was suffocating. Elena Ray stood at the head of the table, not behind her seat anymore, not in white robes. She'd shed the outer layer, revealing the dark uniform beneath, stitched with no medals, no insignia, only the ghost of an old burn across the fabric at the ribs. She hadn't spoken since the boy's name had appeared. She didn't need to. Her silence did more damage than most fleets. Ambassador Grawl had retreated into himself, blinking too rapidly. The Kravex ambassador clenched his upper mandibles, clicking under his breath as if chewing stone. A few tried to whisper to aides, but their voices cracked in their throats. Even the jelly-bodied Rotax had pulled their hover platform back several feet, tendrils twitching in some involuntary echo of fear. The Virgin Shard monk leaned forward, crystalline elbows glinting in the artificial light. You say you count your dead, Ambassador Ray. We've acknowledged their loss. But war, true war, does not allow time for individual grief. Elena's eyes lifted. Calm, patient, inevitable. You misunderstand, she said, voice soft as wind slipping through scorched fields. We don't count the dead for closure. We count them for aim. From a far end of the chamber, a display screen shimmered to life. Not summoned by anyone present. It began to play. A transmission. Public, unredacted. A grainy feed from an orbital station above what was one Sol. Alien gunships sweeping through atmosphere like metallic vultures. Plasma arcs. Screams caught mid-broadcast, then static. The date flashed in the corner. Day 1 of the treaty violation. Another clip. A school in Nairobi. Children diving under desks. Then white light. Then dust. Day 2. Paris. Sao Paulo. Cairo. Enough, barked the Zathan representative, slamming one prosthetic limb against the table. We did not authorize this playback. This is not part of the peace procedure. Elena turned to him slowly. No, she said. You authorized the deaths. The playback's on us. The footage shifted, now showing something quieter. Human soldiers combing through rubble. Not searching for survivors. Searching for names. One by one, they wrote them down. Not in code. Not into databases. But by hand. You call us primitive, she said, gesturing to the projection. Yet we documented every single soul lost to your weapons. Not because it was efficient. Because it was righteous. A pause. The Andari delegate, all shimmering membrane and gentle intent, tried to mediate. We acknowledged the tragedy. The Galactic Tribunal offered reparations. No species has given more tribute than. Elena raised a hand. Reparations. She tapped the tablet again. A new projection rose. A spreadsheet. Names, again, but now matched to numbers. Gold bars. Shipments. Data exchanges. Political concessions. Your reparations, she said, voice hardening. You put a price on grief. On childhoods ended. On languages silenced. You think we value a human life at 5 kilograms of lumium, or... She walked toward the table, slow and precise, each step sounding like a countdown. We count differently, she said. And I'm here to correct the equation. Ambassador Grawl finally found his voice again, though it rasped as if pulled through sand. Then what is this, Elena? A trial. She stopped beside him. Their difference in height was comical. She still felt taller. No, she said. It's a verdict. Gasps. A few delegates instinctively moved back from their chairs, as if the air itself had become volatile. It had. The Kravex tried to reassert dominance. You would threaten a peace summit? We didn't start this as a peace summit, she said, without blinking. You did. And what do you intend to do? Asked the Lethari envoy, feathers slightly flared. Take vengeance here? In this dome? Surrounded by peacekeepers. Elena didn't answer immediately. She raised her arm and pointed. A figure stepped from the wall. Then another. And another. Black uniforms. No insignia. Human. Silent. Within 10 seconds, 12 operatives lined the edges of the chamber, spaced evenly. Not drawing weapons. Just standing. But every movement was too clean, too rehearsed, like a performance perfected long ago. The message was clear. You're not in charge here. The dome lights dimmed, not by error. The human tech staff had overridden the systems from orbit. You don't understand, Elena said, finally circling back to her seat. We're not angry. We passed anger years ago. We passed mourning and bargaining and vengeance. We found something purer, something colder. She sat down. Her eyes swept the chamber. Purpose. The Rotax uncoiled halfway. This is a threat. Your delegation will be sanctioned. Your planet will. You killed 99 million humans, Elena interrupted. We let you live because we were studying you. Now they froze. The words were too quiet to be rhetorical. You think we spent the last 10 years grieving, she said. But what we've been doing is far worse. We've been listening, watching, recording every lie, every smirk, every shipment of stolen medicine, every attempt to play victim when we buried children. One of the operatives opened a case. Inside, a hollow emitter, activated. It displayed the inner schematics of this very chamber. Every entry point, every hidden vent, every biometric trigger, labeled, monitored. Your security system? Elena said. Installed by a firm based out of Europa. Human engineers. Your shields? Calibrated by exospecialists trained in Colorado. You thought you outsourced efficiency. You outsourced sovereignty. A chill slithered across the room. You're not surrounded by peacekeepers, she added. You're surrounded by witnesses. The shard monk's voice cracked like shattering ice. To what? She leaned forward. You're sentencing. From a far end, a delegate, the Belka observer who hadn't spoken once, finally stirred. I warned them, the voice rasped. Told them you were still sharpening your knives behind silk tongues. They laughed. Elena glanced his way. Good, she said. We wanted them laughing. The Kravek's ambassador growled, a wet, feral noise. You have no claim to execute law. She locked eyes with him. We have claim to memory. She stood again. And we remember everything. The footage behind her shifted one last time. It was quiet. A little boy in a field. Blurry. Laughing. He lifted a model spaceship in his hands, grinning into a sunbeam. Wind ruffled his hair. His name was written in the bottom corner. Aaron Ray. I watched this for the last time 12 years ago, she whispered. She tapped the feed off. I swore it wouldn't be for nothing. Then silence again, until one alien near the door stood abruptly, stumbling backward. What do you want? What does Earth want? Elena looked up, no smile now. Only steel. We want truth, she said. We want every species that ordered, enabled, or ignored genocide to stand accountable. And we want the rest of the galaxy to understand something we should have said much earlier. She stepped out from the table circle, toward the chamber doors. We are not prey. We are the ones who remember the prey. Her eyes burned, not with fury, but something more terrifying. Discipline. And we're done counting. And as she stepped into the shadowed corridor behind the dome, one last image flickered to life in the stunned chamber. A human battle fleet. Already waiting. Already positioned. Already in motion. The corridor behind the council dome was silent except for the low hum of air filtration and distant echoes of boots, soft, disciplined, human boots. Ambassador Elena Ray walked alone now, no attendants, no translators, no guards. Not because she lacked protection, but because none was needed. The most dangerous people in the dome didn't carry weapons. They carried memory. She paused at a sealed doorway, flanked by two silent operatives in black, their eyes forward, unblinking. One nodded slightly. The lock disengaged without her touching a thing. The room inside was circular, dimly lit, with a long obsidian table in the center. It was not a place for conversation. It was a place for command. Seated around it were 6 individuals, each human, each wearing different shades of quiet. A strategist, a historian, a former general, a linguist, a tech ghost who no longer existed on any official registry, and a woman with snow-white hair pulled tight into a knot, her gaze sharp enough to cut titanium. Status, Elena said, her voice low and clear. The tech ghost answered, his voice calm. Fleet is locked. Cloak array is holding. Interference systems are operational across the outer comm rings. Localized disruptions are masking our fleet presence from orbital sweeps. How many species still believe this is a diplomatic session? The historian asked dryly. Roughly 73%, said the strategist. The rest are trying to decide whether to run or beg. They'll do both, said the general. That's the trick. Elena took her seat at the head. Her fingers laced together, knuckles white. Have they touched the tablet? No, replied the linguist. They're too scared. The last projection made one of them vomit. The others are debating if we've weaponized grief. A pause. Then a faint smile crept to the corner of Elena's mouth. We have. The strategist leaned forward, voice as smooth as a guillotine's drop. You still want to go back in alone? I have to. They think you're here to mourn. I am, she said, but not for the dead. The general studied her a long moment, then gave a sharp nod. Then we're greenlit. The sky's yours. Elena stood again, slower this time. Her limbs carried the tension of years, of ceremonies endured, of treaties signed with shaking hands and hidden knives. As she reached the threshold of the door, the tech ghost whispered, "You sure they'll get the message?" She didn't turn. Oh, they'll get it. Back in the dome, the atmosphere had turned from tense to flammable. The delegates whispered now not to each other, but to invisible aides on silent channels, most of which no longer worked. The Kravex ambassador had resorted to drawing symbols on his arm with a claw, some ancient signal for military extraction. The Rotax had folded in on itself entirely, a spinning orb of mucus and defense posture. Elena re-entered without fanfare. All heads turned. She walked the room's curve like gravity bent for her. She didn't speak. She just pressed her palm to the edge of the table. The tablet flared back to life. Another list. This time, planets. Coordinates. Each one marked with a human flag. "You're colonizing again?" asked the Theroth envoy, his voice high-pitched with disbelief. "We never stopped," she said, eyes gleaming. "We just learned to do it, while bleeding." A soft murmur rose. Confusion. Alarm. "These are claimed systems," someone cried. "They were claimed while our children burned," she replied. "We consider that an invalid contract." Ambassador Grawl slammed a tentacle against the table. "You're violating." "We're correcting," she interrupted. Then she leaned forward, her voice a scalpel. "Did you think we wrote a list just to cry over it? That we were going to sob our way through galactic forgiveness? That we'd weep, write poems, and vanish into history with bowed heads?" No one answered. She stepped away from the table. "We wrote the list to remember who not to trust, who applauded, who profited, who stood still while we buried 99 million hearts." The dome's ceiling shimmered again, this time by her command. A fleet appeared above the dome. Not in orbit, not posturing, just there, black as the void. No insignia, no formation. Dozens of ships, silent, as if waiting for a nod. "I thought you were here for peace," croaked a voice. A delegate from the Andari, whose hands had never held a weapon in centuries. "I am," Elena said. "But peace is not the absence of noise. Sometimes it's the silence that follows judgment." A delegate from the Belka stood abruptly. "You said this wasn't war." She nodded. "It's not." "Then what is this?" She turned, looked at each of them. A recalibration. A quiet panic began to bloom. Species that had always assumed human softness meant obedience, that our laughter meant weakness, that our capacity to forgive meant forgetfulness. Those species were now beginning to understand. "You always wondered," Elena continued, "why we wrote stories about monsters, about war, about revenge and sacrifice. Why we honored the fallen with stone and flame, and never let a single name be erased. You mocked our films, our flags, our funerals. But you never asked what it meant." She raised her hand. The fleet above shimmered, then flickered, revealing not just presence, but readiness. "This is what it means." The Vergen Shard monk pressed both palms together. "You came to end something." Elena looked directly at her. "No. We came to start something." A shift passed through the room. Not a sound. A knowing. "We're building something new," she said. "A council where those who order genocide don't get a vote. Where the dead are not traded for treaties. Where memory is law." "You can't make a galaxy bow to memory," someone whispered. She turned softly. "We don't need them to bow. We just need them to know." Behind her, the operative opened a case and removed a small black sphere. He placed it on the center of the table. It glowed faintly. The delegates leaned in. "This is a memory sphere," Elena said. "It holds the full footage of every war crime committed against our people. It cannot be erased. It cannot be duplicated. And it cannot be turned off." She looked at them all, serpent and insect, stone skin and vapor cloud. "You will each receive a copy." So your children never ask why the humans left the old council. So they'll understand why the new one speaks softly, but carries the names of the dead. Her voice never rose, but the impact was seismic. You think we came here to weep? She asked one last time. Then her voice turned to iron. We came here to end pretending. The sphere blinked once, and behind them all, a new signal reached every ship in orbit. A simple, 3-word transmission. No more waiting. The silence didn't return this time. After the memory sphere pulsed once more, brilliant, crimson, undeniable, the council dome no longer felt like a chamber for governance. It felt like a tomb, slowly realizing it had already been sealed. Some delegates stood, unsure of whether to run, to speak, or to beg. Others sat, so still they looked fossilized. No one dared interrupt Elena Ray as she remained motionless, her hands folded on the table, the only breathing creature in the room who looked perfectly at peace. Above them, the Black Fleet had spread like ink on water. Silent, unblinking vessels, human-built and human-armed, hovered not with intention, but with conclusion. You brought us here to humiliate us, said the Rotax ambassador finally, voice warbled and shrill. You lured us with diplomacy only to unveil this theater. Elena turned to him. Her gaze was calm, detached, yet sharp enough to peel skin from truth. No, she said. You humiliated yourselves. We simply opened the windows and let the galaxy watch. The Kravex delegate stood, mandibles flaring. You have made a mistake, Ambassador Ray. Your fleet may be vast, but it is not invincible. You think a list of names makes you righteous. Her tone shifted just slightly. There was no shouting, but something ancient stirred behind her words. No, she said. The names made us focused. What makes us righteous is restraint. There was a pause then, a moment where the council expected fire, expected bombs, death, the final human detonation of vengeance. But none came. Elena stood slowly. The operatives behind her didn't move, but the tension they radiated thickened the air like storm pressure. We brought names, she said. You brought targets. She gestured toward the ceiling. Holograms blinked into existence across the chamber. Hundreds of planetary systems lit red, each one cross-referenced against council archives, each one associated with a known collaborator of the human massacre. You gave us coordinates when you tried to erase us, she said. Each bomb you dropped, each city you shattered, each species that stood by and smiled, gave us a breadcrumb, a pattern. You handed us the map. You're bluffing, the Belka representative snapped, though sweat beaded down his neck. You're not killers. You're diplomats. You're humans. Elena looked directly at him. Yes. And for centuries, we begged for peace with open hands. You slapped them. We asked for justice through your tribunals. You mocked our tears. We invited you to share our culture, and you sold it in markets. She stepped forward now toward the center of the table. The sphere continued to glow. One pulse every 3 seconds. Like a heartbeat. You mistook compassion for cowardice. You mistook poetry for passivity. But you never once asked yourselves why the oldest stories we tell are not about peace, but revenge. The Shard monk whispered, You never came here for reconciliation. No, Elena said. We came here for completion. The doors to the dome hissed open. Another human entered, tall, broad-shouldered, bearing a commander's coat black as voids stitched with crimson. His boots clicked like punctuation. He carried no weapon, but his mere presence made several species reach instinctively for defense triggers they no longer controlled. Who is this? One delegate whispered. The man inclined his head. Commander Jonas Ray, Earth Fleet, executor of Operation Threshold. Several gasped. The name hadn't been spoken publicly in over a decade. A ghost project, a whispered contingency, a myth. Elena smiled faintly. My brother. But he was on the casualty list, said the Andari ambassador, stunned. We faked 1 million deaths, Jonas said. We buried empty coffins and closed caskets. We told you we were licking wounds. What we were doing was preparing. He set a chip down on the table. Its edge shimmered. No logos. No encryption. Just certainty. You thought we came here with grievances, Elena said. We didn't. We came here with orders. The holograms shifted again. Ships. Thousands of them. Already docked inside neutral zones. Cargo freighters. Repair vessels. Scientific probes. Except they weren't. Elena touched her ring. A signal burst silently into the room. The images changed. Every freighter transformed. Stealth artillery. Mobile warp mines. Deep core bunker breachers, hidden in containers labeled humanitarian aid. Those weren't tribute deliveries, Jonas said. They were position markers. For every single one of you. The Belcod delegate collapsed into a seat, face drained of color. You've weaponized diplomacy. No, said Elena. We weaponized you. And for the first time in 1,000 years of council history, a room full of warlords, empires, and galactic elders sat in helpless silence as they realized just how thoroughly they'd been outplayed. You told us to forget, she continued, pacing. You told us to move on. You told us that a few decades would heal 99 million wounds. That some money, some trade routes, a few apologies would wash the blood off our history. She paused. We declined. The Kravex delegate stood again. You think this makes you strong? No, Elena said, her voice a whisper now. It makes us true. And as the sphere on the table gave its final pulse, the dome systems went dark for 2 seconds. When they came back online, every delegate saw the message on their personal systems. 1 hour. Decide where you stand. The screen flickered. A map of the galaxy. Half glowing red, half not. Jonas Ray turned to Elena. All systems aligned. She nodded once. Then execute phase 2. Wait, the Andari ambassador said, rising trembling. There are innocents, non-combatants, children. We know, Elena said. That's why we sent the warning. That's more than we got. And then, for a moment, just one, her voice cracked, not with rage, but something far colder. Resolve. We're not here to kill planets. We're here to erase permission. The delegates looked at one another, some already reaching for escape, others for surrender, a few for defiance. Too late. The memory sphere rose from the table, hovering now. It began to spin. And from above, Earth's battle fleet opened its signal array, not with weapons, but with broadcast. Every screen, in every major station across the galaxy lit, with a single human transmission. A list. Names. All 99 million. 1. By. 1. Then it started again. And would not stop. Jonas turned toward the exit. Elena followed. Her silhouette framed by the final words on the central display. Remember US. Or we will remind you.